Hi, I'm Jesse Rhines, and welcome to Loft Interviews. This is my loft here in downtown Los Angeles, and I'm starting a whole new interview process. So, my first interview ever, well, on this show actually, is with Dennis Burroughs, who is a ship's captain in British Virgin Islands and will be in Martha's Vineyard for an event that we're having soon, and will offer the opportunity for people to do sailing with him. So, what is it that you're proposing for doing in Martha's Vineyard?
Well, one of the things that I always wanted to do in Martha's Vineyard now, and this is tied to what I'm doing now, because right now I'm a charter captain in the British Virgin Islands, and basically I sail every day while I'm there, and I have different people that rent boats, and they hire me as a captain to sail them around the British Virgin Islands, and I also still do deliveries, but I always wanted to do something in Martha's Vineyard, have a schooner, a wooden boat, a traditional wooden boat, and I would take people out from Oak Bluffs, which is traditionally a black and or African American town from years and years ago, and take them from Oak Bluffs and have someone on board who would be a docent or a griot or something of that form, and tell the African American history of Martha's Vineyard. And we would go out for 3 or 4 hour sail and talk about the woman who was a Native American, who was with one of the Mayhews, who ended up owning most of the island, and then she interspersed with Africans and African Americans, and so that whole history is very deep. So always wanted to do that. I also wanted to do, or would like to do, a sail where I would have that same traditional vessel take people from Oak Bluffs and sail to Nantucket. On the way to Nantucket, we would have someone giving the history of Martha's Vineyard and history of Nantucket in relationship to African Americans, because in the old days, Nantucket was a whaling port, and at the end of whaling, 85% of the whalers were black. They had a special school there, and right now, to this day, they have the African Meeting House, which has been restored by the African American Museum of Boston, and now they give tours. And so what I would like to do is to take people on a sailboat for a sail to Nantucket, which is about 21 nautical miles from Martha's Vineyard. It would take about 3.5 hours, 4 hours. Take them on a tour of the African Meeting House, let them absorb some of Nantucket's views and pleasures, and then that night have a dinner, and then after the dinner have an academic or scholarly lecture by a professor such as Professor Gates or Professor Marable, who would talk more about the academic or scholarly approach to the understanding of the history of these two islands and how African Americans fit in. And then everybody would stay overnight, and then we'd have a nice day sail back. So those are the types of sailing things that I wanted to do. Now with Wrap-Up, after I saw their website, I said, wow, this would be a great way to sort of get something like this started, where we could take some of the participants and take them out on a sail and let them know about the black history of Martha's Vineyard. And in the same vein, I was offering myself as a participant of Wrap-Up, as I looked at some of the subjects, because of my experience of basically working in film and working in the sailing, industry. I'm a professional yachtsman. That's how I make all my money now. And I'm always the only person of color that's involved in any project I'm working on. So I wanted to offer my experiences in that quote unquote white world for the participants of this group.
And you spent a good bit of time in Martha's Vineyard, is that right?
Oh yes, I did. In between 2002 and 2004, I lived year round on Martha's Vineyard. I became very, very much involved in the black community in the summer as well as the winter, because there were people such as Della Hardman and Roger Schilling and Bill Jones who was a professor at MIT, and they all lived there. So I got to meet them, and they became my friends. And then in the summer, I got to meet the people that would come up and spend the summer there. And then I taught school as well. On Martha's Vineyard, I taught sailing. I worked for one of the ferry companies, the Fast Ferry out of Quonset Point, Rhode Island. So I was really considered myself to be an islander for
Mm-hmm.
those 2 years, and really understood what it was to be an islander in Martha's Vineyard. And so I
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of experience. A lot of the people there know me. A lot of the summer people know me, and I've created these friendships through that
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Well, if people want to take you up on this venture, how should they contact you?
Well, I have an email address, dennisburrows@gmail.com, and they can contact me. But what I'm really hoping is that maybe I can talk with the organizers of this wrap-up organization, and maybe get together some sort of organized sailing event that we could do. And within that sailing event, it just won't be fun out on the water.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be some sort of significant um, opportunity for people to gain more information about the African American involvement and the history of the island.
Well, it sounds perfect to me, and I think that people will really appreciate your making that offer. So I hope that it is successful.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was Dennis Burroughs offering his services on, we don't know what ship it will be yet, in Martha's Vineyard coming up in August. It's August, the last week of August,
22nd.
right before the Democratic convention, because part of this wrap-up has to do with Barack Obama's campaign. And we hope to see you there. All right, this is Jesse RHINES. Thank you very much. Bye.
I was doing some recreational sailing every weekend out on Long Island Sound with some friends, and we were recreationally sailing. And then I got interested in doing a documentary on black sailors.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up going to Mystic Seaport Museum to do the research on this subject. And there was a conference called Blacks in the Maritime Trades.
Wow. So this is Mystic, Connecticut?
Yeah, Mystic Seaport Museum. They had a conference called Blacks in the Maritime Trades, and that was in 1991 and 1990. And that's when I found out about a vessel that they were planning to build called the Amistad, which would be a reproduction of the Baltimore Clipper schooner, Baltimore-style Clipper schooner, Amistad, which was involved in the Amistad Revolt or the Amistad Incident in 1839. So they were planning to reproduce this vessel, and this was 1990, so I kept that sort of in my head. And at the same time, I moved from recreational sailing into doing sailboat deliveries, which was to take a sailboat from one place to another for an owner or with the owner. And I started doing small trips from New Jersey to Buzzards Bay or Newport, and then I got together with a gentleman who was doing professional deliveries, and we started delivering yachts from Annapolis, Maryland, down to Tortola in the British Virgin Islands.
And what was your role on these? Were you captaining these
No,
ships?
no, I wasn't at the time. I was just a crew member,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of worked my way up from being a crew member to a first mate, but I was never in charge of any of the vessels, but I did get a lot of experience. Subsequent to that, we received an offer to fly to France and go to a place called Sable-d'Olonne, which is on the southwest coast of France, and right in the province of Vendée, and to pick up a boat from the factory that was belonging to a woman in the United States, and to sail that boat back across the Atlantic. And that was a 46-foot catamaran. It was a privileged 465. And we did that with a crew of 4 people, which was pretty interesting.
What is a privileged 465?
Well, a privileged 465 is a sailing vessel, which is a catamaran. It's got 2 hulls.
Oh, this is a type of...
It's a type of sailing vessel. And it is considered to be one of the Rolls Royces of yachts, of sailing yachts. It cost at that time about $800,000, $900,000.
Wow.
And so we pick up the boat right from the factory. It's really got no radar. We didn't have a Dodger or a Bimini top, and our autopilot went kablooey on us about 5 days into the trip. So during that trip, we did stop off in Madeira, which is off the coast of Morocco, and we got some more provisions. But for the rest of the trip, we did not have an autopilot, so we had to steer by hand for 24 hours a day for 28 days. So that, okay.